Welcome into Overtime, presented by McDonald's. Dewey Dailey alongside John Bruce. John, nice to have you back with us here. It's been 2 weeks, I believe, 3 weeks since the last time
we were in the studio
So, first episode of the week, episode 11 of Overtime. Going to talk about some volleyball, boys and girls soccer, both from last week, and preview a little bit of the upcoming week as well. So it should be a fun time here on this Tuesday.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. The heat in Texas is no joke, because Thursday, as soon as I got back, I went down and watched Lucasville Valley and Ironton St. Joe boys soccer, and I wore shorts and a pullover, and I was miserable, and it was like 70 degrees. Like, it wasn't bad at all, but going from 102 the day before to 70 is a big difference. So I'm pretty thankful to be finally kind of adjusted now. So
readjusted,
and had a great time. But I'm happy to be back and got to actually see 4 games in 3 days. So, because I was able to get a soccer game in on Saturday afternoon as well, that we'll talk about in a little bit. And then the 2 football games we had on Friday and Saturday, we'll talk about in episode 12
on Thursday.
Yeah, so that'll be should be a good episode. Thank you to Brock for sitting
filling in.
Filling in. And, always good to see Brock out and about. And, he's a good guy.
What are the chances he watches this?
0. So, but I'm still going to give him a shout out. But yeah, it's
I hope like in a couple days I get a notification in the chat. It's like, I watched this.
Yes. So I was able to, that's one of the good things, even though I was gone, was so many people stream their stuff now that I was still able to watch or at least catch up on all the sports I needed to, because there's a lot of days where when you're house sitting, there's not a lot to do. So, it was pretty cool to be able to watch maybe even more games than normally, just because I had some time to fill. So, I'm excited to get back in, talk about these games, and, I'm glad you got Grimace on your shirt over there.
Oh, yeah.
Represent
McDonald's.
Yes. Our title sponsor. I'm representing them with a Coke.
We still don't have the as seen in on the McDonald's cup.
Yeah.
Does that one have the as seen on stuff?
This one does not.
Okay.
So I'm gonna complain about something real quick. So in Chillicothe, one of our sponsors, it's $1.29 for a Coke or any large drink.
Assuming in Houston it's less.
No, they all went up because inflation or whatever. But I mean, they were all $1. But in Houston, it was $1.59. So I mean, it's kind of annoying.
Getting a good deal.
Yeah, we're getting a good deal. But Saturday, after I'd covered the Wheelersburg North Adams girls soccer game, the Wheelersburg ones, $1.89. Like, I'm pretty sure it's the only McDonald's in Wheelersburg, so they're just hiking up that price because they've got the monopoly on the best Coke around. But that's why we appreciate our sponsors in Chillicothe, Circleville, Waverly, and Greenfield at McDonald's.
Yep. Yes. Official sponsor of Overtime. So we'll talk some volleyball from last week, highlight, I believe, only one player for volleyball, talk a little bit of soccer, talk some specific players, and that'll be about all this episode will
some
be
big
about.
moments. Big moments. And like we've said before, we want to get as much notoriety out there for these kids as possible. So any additional help being pointed our way for some of these other events, like especially on the, we're pretty good on the 23 corridor. But sometimes when you go in Shackland, they have the best website around. Right. It's not always updated in the fall, so that can be kind of difficult. And then the OVC also is another one that's kind of tight on updates. So if we can get some extra help on some of these players, we're going to highlight at least one player from each of those conferences anyway, but it'd be nice to be able to get as much information out as possible.
The DMs on Twitter are always open on the... Or actually, I think they are. I don't know. I've never checked since we haven't gotten one. But the if they're not, they will be by now. The DMs on the Overtime Twitter account are always open. So
or just bother Derek.
Yeah, or no, actually, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
probably nothing will get done.
Yeah,
that probably wouldn't be the most effective way to go about it, but it's all right. All right, so we'll talk some volleyball from the previous week. John, we'll start with you. A game we previewed last week, South Webster and Wheelersburg for the second time this season.
Yeah, so Wheelersburg came in with only one loss. That was to South Webster. They left with 2 losses. As South Webster wins it in 3, pretty comfortably in all 3. South Webster seems like they're really rolling at this time. Well on their way to an SOC2 title. Again, like they're with Bella Claxton, you have the best player in the area. At maybe best all-around player, because Christian Thompson obviously were, but
there's about
probably
90 miles between those two.
Yeah, and probably in Division 3, Bella Claxton, best player in our area.
South Webster's D3.
Yep.
So there, how many divisions are there in volleyball?
4.
Okay.
They're barely D3. So Thompson's the best player in D2. So at least in Division 3, Bella Claxton top of that area. In that match, she had 10 kills, 16 digs, 26 assists. She's just a outstanding all-around player. She didn't have a ton of aces in the match, but she typically does have 2 or 3. I think she only had 1 in this match. Skylar Zimmerman, another senior that just an outstanding all-around player. She had 9 kills, 21 digs in the match. Addie Claxton had 17 digs and 3 assists as well. They got some contributions from Renard and Crum, and they don't have a huge rotational players, but the players they do all do their job very well. They're very hard to score against, even though they don't have great size at the net, but they're so athletic and so well coached that they cover a lot of ground. And that was evident in them beating Wheelersburg in 3. Now, for Wheelersburg, there's nothing to hang their heads on. An SOC2 title is probably out of their grasp right now unless something absolutely insane happens, since they've already played Webster twice. But they're 8-2 on the year. They don't have a senior in the rotation. I haven't seen if they have a senior on the roster, but they don't have a senior in the rotation. So, I mean, you don't want to lose those games, and it's Wheelersburg. They're used to winning these league championships, but they're definitely built to make a big tournament run this year and then in the future as well. Gracie Perkins, a junior, and Grace Woodward both played really well. Woodward only a sophomore. So they've got a lot coming back. They're always well coached, and they're a team that I think we'll see. It's kind of like in basketball where they do pretty much an all-day district final day down at Waverly High School, not the downtown gym. And at the high school, they typically have 3.
Well, I know we live streamed 2 of them last year.
Yeah, and typically Wheelersburg's in it, and I believe we'll be seeing them in that one as well. So at the very least for them, they can definitely get a second place finish in the SOC2 and then build off of that with a big tournament run. And I think South Webster is really well set up to just keep this undefeated streak rolling as they continue on in the season.
Well, one thing I will say about, because you mentioned Wheelersburg and potentially finishing second, is they actually haven't played West yet. They played them for the first time this week, and when you technically look at the standings, at least according to Max Preps, West is a half game above them, because I think West was 6-1, and then South, because 3 of the combined losses between all of them are all to South Webster.
Okay.
So
because I saw that they were listed as 3rd, but I didn't.
Yeah, they're a half game back of West, who they play this Wednesday. So I think that'll give us a better look, because I can't remember because I'm not looking at their entire schedule, but I'm pretty sure they play each other for their last league game of the season as well. They play late. I'm not sure if it was like a scheduling issue for them, because it's kind of weird to play, for Wheelersburg, you play South Webster twice before you even play West one time. So I don't know if that was it got moved back, or if that's just kind of how it was, but yeah, it should be.
Yeah, that's definitely a strange scheduling thing right there. But yeah, and I feel like, I know they do it in football, but I feel like West and Wheelersburg should always be the last game of the season, just because it's such a big rivalry.
I mean, it's really picked up the last couple years.
Yeah, especially in the girls
basketball. Yeah. West beats them twice in the regular season, and then you get, a district final, regional final.
Yep.
And Wheelersburg wins it and goes to the state.
Yeah, I was actually talking about that Wheelersburg team the other day, where I was talking about how good some of these kids are at these interviews at this point.
And naturals.
Yeah, and obviously they were upset after they lost in the state, but the Walker girl, I can't remember the other one. But it was two of their seniors that played a lot of sports, and they were obviously upset, but they spoke so well after, and you could just tell how.
Oh, because they do like the professional interviews after the state games, don't they? Yeah, I forgot about that.
So I was really impressed with them, and actually something I'll talk about in girls soccer. I'll talk about after you do. I interviewed a couple of their younger soccer players on Saturday, and they were great too. Right. So I mean. At the very least, big ups to Wheelersburg on being able to have those kids that are very ready for the camera. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So going to another game from last week, a little bit of shaction for us here on Overtime. It was one of the games we previewed. It was Fairfield and Whiteoak. The Lions take it 3-1. Fairfield remains, as of this recording, undefeated in the Shack. Now, they're one of 3 teams remaining in the Shack that are undefeated. Peebles and North Adams are the other 2. However, both of those teams are in the Shack 1. So Fairfield, the only remaining undefeated team in the Shack 2 now. While we're recording this, because we record these on Monday, so really the Monday games kind of get like overlapped until the next week. So we'll probably be talking about this Fairfield and North Adams match that's happening like as we speak next week. Mm-hmm. But that game, somebody's coming out of that game with a loss, right? Yes. Somebody's going to be 6-1 and somebody's going to be 7-0 in the league. But back to the Whiteoak game, Joby Hatton, it's a player she's a player that we've highlighted a bunch this year, especially whenever we talk about Fairfield. 21 kills, 21 digs, both were game highs. Mackenzie Jade Anderson, 10 kills, the only other player in the match for either team with double-digit kills. And then Kelsey Clark had 38 assists and 19 digs. That was second on the team behind Hatton. I already talked about they got a big matchup coming up this week. Well, they got a big match right tonight against North Adams. And one other thing for Hatton, second in kills in the Shack behind North Adams' Caitlin Borger. So that, the live streams for volleyball are always a little bit weird for us because we don't do them weekly as if kind of how we do the football ones. But I think that probably would have been a pretty good game because you get the number 1 and the number 2 in terms of kills in the Shack. But Hatton also leading the Shack in digs. So, when you have a player like that, it's you're always going to find success, which, they have through the first half of the season. And now I've said it before. I've always thought it was interesting how, like, in the Shack, like, when you play teams in the other division, it's still a league game. Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like if the SOC did that, it would be, like, very lopsided. Like, no offense. I mean, it depends on the sport, right? So, like, for volleyball, like, Notre Dame is still, like, pretty good. But, like, football, like, the SOC one team's league records would probably be pretty bad. Yeah. But then in that case, like, for football, like, they would literally only play league. Like, all their non-league games would just be against the SOC one schools. So,
but when you go into like basketball and stuff,
you're right. That when you play like 20, 25 games, you're able to do that. But in a 10-game season, you could maybe squeeze one of them in for like a non-league. But that it seems, and just from what I've seen, it seems like there's a pretty large like athlete difference between SOC one. I mean, we went down to Notre Dame and they had like maybe 25, 26 players on their team, and like Waverly probably has 50. So
it's just where that school size difference, and that's what like Ironton St. Joe is what like impresses me so much about them in every sport is like they don't have very many kids in the school, and they're still pretty competitive in all these sports regardless of that, and so they're able to put together some good teams and whatnot. But yeah, the Shack seems like it's really maybe on the up. Well, and especially with Hatton and Borger only being juniors,
right? And for Whiteoak, they're still 8-3. They're 6-2 in the Shack 2. Still in second place in the second division. Brianna Hill 9 kills, 20 digs. Both of those were team highs for the Cats. Claire Ames and Adrian Phillips both had 10 assists. Their next league game is on Tuesday at Lynchburg, so we'll see how they fare in another Shaction night on Tuesday. So
yeah, nothing better than Shaction.
Nothing. I wish they played football so we could have Friday night Shaction. Yeah. We're definitely. I don't know. I can't say that we had one basketball game last year that was Shack on Shack outside of. I didn't we have a tournament game that was? Oh no, it was North Adams and
Yeah, because the Good Guys radio,
Right.
they're like, I admire how much work they do because they are like, there's no games available to go to down there because they do such a great job covering all that. So that's part of the reason why we don't get a chance to get down there. Now next, I believe it's Tuesday in girls soccer. There may
it's like
be
Lynchburg and North Adams.
Yeah,
'Cause we've been talking about that game
it's either
since the
Tuesday or
previews.
Thursday. If we can figure out a way to get streaming to work there, we may be able to
Is that
do
at
it.
Lynchburg?
Yeah, it's at Lynchburg, and I think that's probably a better chance.
Do they have turf or how does I don't know?
They still have grass, but it's a really nice
Oh,
facility.
okay.
And they've got like pretty good sized bleachers.
I've never been down there,
Yeah.
so
I watched a game down there a couple
over
of years
there.
ago. I played down there in high school, and it was not the quality of what it is now. Coach West with the girls program's done a great job of building everything up over there over the last few years. So
I know before we get to the next game, we got to get down there for either a boys or a girls basketball game. If we're going to do Shaction, it has to be at Lynchburg Clay because I just want to
Yes.
see the court. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, we already saw Gallia with the blue court. I know Circleville's is in a different color, but they have a pretty cool court as well.
Mm-hmm.
Even like Unioto's redone theirs, and I haven't been in there since they've done
so
that.
bright.
I know. I've seen pictures, and it's not even recognizable.
yeah, it's like I haven't been in it since they redid it, but all I've seen are pictures. I'm like, why is it so bright?
Yeah.
It's always so dark and dingy, and then we go into Lynchburg, and you think it's going to be like it's crazy because you think it's going to be really dark because the court's so dark.
Well,
but
the
it's,
lights probably just shine right
yeah.
off of it and everything. So
yeah,
definitely
so
a cool place.
it definitely is.
Probably wouldn't be a good idea for like a turf field. Somebody just did that.
Yeah,
I saw
it was a D2 college.
Yeah, I mean that's like you're talking like shoes melting off and stuff. I mean that's just especially and wasn't it in like Texas or something?
It was somewhere
too?
it's real
Like if you want to
stupid.
do that in like like
Maine.
or like up in Cleveland or anywhere like around the Great Lakes where it gets cold in the winter, like okay, but like whenever it's November and it's still like 90 degrees, like,
Yeah.
it's probably not a good mix.
Then you could be like Alderson Brodus, who's going to close down, but they redid their turf this year.
Yeah, I know that
That
was interesting.
Yeah, sometimes you got to be smart with your money.
Maybe they just know that. I mean, there might be like a high school around that. Maybe they're, I don't know, donating the field
Yeah.
to. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know. That's in West Virginia, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of local athletes that gone there, so hopefully the ones that have are able to get their degree before they close
Or
down,
at least find a suitable home
yeah.
elsewhere.
because it's been really good to a lot of locals. So that was kind of tough because that loses a place at that.
How far away is Alderson Brodus from or Brodus? Oh, it doesn't matter. They're closing.
Yeah.
How far away is that from Marshall?
I don't think it's real far.
Is it the same direction?
I think so.
Okay.
I believe.
I don't know. I mean, I know Marshall's like you could hit a golf ball from Marshall to Ohio, but
Yeah.
because that's like right next. I bet a lot of Fairland people probably go to Marshall. So
Yeah, because you'll see.
and Chesapeake. And
Yeah,
like
you'll
all
see
those schools.
Fairland with their sometimes in basketball their non-league schedule is just like a bunch of West Virginia schools. because
What's the one school that everybody plays from West Virginia? I Greenup County is a popular one.
that's in Kentucky? Yeah.
Oh, that's in Kentucky.
yeah.
They're Huntington.
yes.
Everybody plays Huntington
Yeah.
down. All the OVC schools play Huntington. Like that's the one like non-Ohio school that I've seen multiple times on different schedules. So
Huntington actually ended up as a top maybe 5 high school basketball team in the country
Boys
years ago.
or
Yeah,
girls?
it was
Boys.
boys. OJ Mayo and
OJ Mayo.
OJ Mayo and Patrick Patterson were there.
I don't know who that is.
He played for the Rockets for a while. He went to Kentucky.
That's cool.
Pat. He wore
He
mittens.
didn't just go to West.
He
How far
wore
is
mittens on the bench for games.
Morgantown is more east.
Yes.
East than
Yeah, Morgantown's pretty far away. So Morgantown's a school that you might see like Warren play because it's over on that side.
I
of the
didn't mean
state.
Morgantown High School. I meant like West
I know.
Virginia's.
Well, so like we'll say
here we go.
yeah, here would be probably this is a little too pointy, but like right in here would be like Huntington. Morgantown would be like over in here. So
all right. Well, John, if you want to get into a little SVC action, 2 of the kind of under the radar teams in the SVC, although Southeastern, although losing, kind of made a name for themselves with the win over Unioto. I think that was last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever.
So going into last week, there were I believe it was 3 teams with 1 loss in the SVC, which was Adena, Southeastern, and Unioto. They had all beaten each other, more or less. With Unioto beating Adena beating Southeastern, Southeastern beating Unioto. But Westfall was just hanging right around with only 2 league losses. Now, they came in to this match at 4-5. Overall, they played a really tough non-league schedule. But in the first set, they were down 22-17. Our Derek Webb was there, and he posted something about it. And then the next thing you know, he posts like, timeout Southeastern is 22 all. And then right after that, 25-22, Westfall wins the set. So they go up, they win the first set 25-22, win the second set 25-22. Southeastern came back in a big way to win the third 25-13. And then Westfall immediately just answered that by doing the same to them, winning the fourth set 25-13 to take the match in 3 and maybe even create more of a logjam. Like,
the SVC is a mess.
Yeah.
I mean,
because like
it was Brock was on here and was even saying like, there's not going to be a gold ball in the SVC. And not only is there may not be a 1-loss team in the SVC.
Because, and we'll talk about that with the Unioto coming up, but the Unioto and Westfall went 5 last time.
And Westfall won the first set, I believe. I don't think they went up 2-0. But it was either they were
up 2-1.
2-1, yeah.
But then Huntington is good. Huntington's good, and they have like 4 league losses, 3 or 4 league losses. So, and then Zane Trace, if they can get fully healthy, is going to be pretty tough too.
And they lost a lot too, as well.
Yeah.
CT.
Now, Piketon beat Fairfield,
so like one of the premier Shack schools.
Yeah, and like Piketon's going to be in 7th because, with how much Paint Valley's lost, they're probably going to end up 8th. But they typically make a little tournament run because they're so battle tested. I mean, last year I watched Piketon play in the sectional semis, and they just utterly dominated a team in the first round of the
like
tournament.
Extremely higher on the seeding.
Yeah, it was just they were just so much better, and it was like, but they just didn't win games because the league's so tough. But yeah, going back to this matchup, like I mentioned, with Westfall winning in 4, that put them to 5-5. They beat Bishop Reedy on Saturday to make them 6-5, which some dummy hasn't updated on SVC Sports Talk yet because it didn't get reported to me. I just saw it today. But they're 6-5. They have 2 league losses going into the last game of league play on Tuesday. But yeah, it's just, a big night. Jalen Whipple, who's one of the better ball handlers in the area, 38 assists in the match. She had 5 aces as well. Leah Johnston had 7 aces for the Mustangs. Like
7?
7. Yeah. So if you can attack that aggressively with the serve, that's going to put you in really good shape, because even if you're not getting, even if they are returning them, they're probably going to be out of system because it's it's obviously a difficult serve to handle. Then Aubrey Clark and Lauren Blackburn each had 11 kills on their attack. Those two are very athletic, very long, very tough at the net. And then Ava Heath led them with 21 digs. Derek texted me after. He was like, man, they're good. I was like, yeah, it's just one of those things where the league is so deep and so good that, losses like they could have 2 losses, and it kind of makes some sense. But for Southeastern, nothing to really hang their heads on. I know it's a home loss, so they probably don't love that. But Josie Lougheed had another big night. Like, I don't know, she'll be SVC Player of the Year one of the next 2 years, but she should be.
Only a sophomore?
Junior.
Oh, junior. Yeah. She meant this year. Next. Yeah. Okay.
She had 17 kills, 14 digs, 11 assists. Morgan Ware, who's also had a really good season for them, she had 13 kills and 13 digs. Chloe Wills had 24 assists. Jessie Higley led the match with 25 digs. I believe she had 3 aces as well. So for Southeastern, obviously, you don't, like, in a league race that's going to be as tight as the SVC is, you don't want to have a loss. But losing to this Westfall team is not the worst thing, because it's such a good, talented team. So I do think that it's going to be a really tight SVC to watch, and these teams are definitely going to be around throughout the year.
Well, going back to Westfall a little bit, because I kind of figured they played a lot of MSL schools just because they're in Pickaway and how close they are. Not only did they play Circleville and Logan Elm, who are pretty not dominant, but they're among the top schools in the MSL.
Yeah.
They played Wheelersburg as well, so. Yeah. The non-league for Westfall has definitely been, I will say, out of our coverage area, and this is as an outsider looking in, because I don't know, I guess I haven't gotten around volleyball as much as I probably should have just say this, but I think if each league in our coverage area had an actual all-star team, I feel like the MSL would just clear everybody.
They're so good.
Because Bloom-Carroll we don't talk about a lot, but we could pick some players off of their team. I mean, Thompson, who we'll talk about a little later from Fairfield. I'm drawing a blank on the girl. McConnell from Circleville, and Claire King from Logan Elm.
Yeah.
There's obviously more players on those teams that could be added as well.
Bloom-Carroll's winning pretty easily, so I'm guessing they have.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Probably have the best
overall
setter.
Yeah, right.
So you could get some really good teams. I would love to see that as
that should be
that should be our SOSA All-Star
exactly.
We just pick league All-Star teams.
You wouldn't be able to pick as many players that you normally would, but say just or actually you'd end up picking more overall. But take whatever we have. I'd probably just say combine the Shack into one, and then the OVC, MSL, SVC. Probably just combine the SOC into one, and just take 10 players from each league, or 10 or 15. I don't know how many players are usually on a volleyball team. I don't know if we could
get everyone up to Westfall, but they got the courts. Them and Jackson both have the courts to do it. Yeah. So, it would be would be a really fun showcase. And these players...
And it would end up being more players as well.
Yeah,
so.
and these players play with each other through the club season. I know with obviously SOVC is the big one, but Spiketown I know is really good and evolving, and some of the other smaller ones that I don't know the names exactly. I don't want to say I'm wrong. Right. So it's like Coach Hutton at Unioto, when he got hired, I was like, how much coaching has he done? Well, he's coached with SOVC. He did coach St. Trace back when I was in school, but then when he got hired at Southeastern, immediately you could just tell how good he was. I know Coach Ward that just got hired at Southeastern hadn't really coached in high school, and now she's got Southeastern off to a 9-2 start. It's such good volleyball. I mean, obviously the SVC is very top heavy. Well, not really top heavy, very strong in volleyball. SOC2 is outstanding. Notre Dame's outstanding. It's just, and that's without even mentioning the MSL, which is,
in my opinion, I think they would be the best. But really, any given night, I mean, I'll speak for myself. A couple times we've previewed Unioto. I'm like, I don't see how they can even hardly lose a set, let alone a match.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Fairfield Union took them down the other night. They lost to Southeastern. I can't think of any other teams they lost to. I'm not looking at theirs.
5 with Westfall.
Right.
Yeah.
So you gotta show up every night. I mean, it's not an easy league or sport to just I feel like with football, especially at the high school level, there aren't a lot of upsets. 9 times out of 10, the better team is probably going to win. I'll use this year for an example. Last night or last week, we saw Huntington and Unioto.
Yeah, you knew what the game was going to be.
Right. Now, when it gets a little closer, we saw West and Waverly, those two teams are a little bit more even matched, so that's a game where maybe it goes either way. Now in volleyball, Unioto plays Huntington. It's this could go either way.
Right.
You just don't know until the match is over. A player could get hot serving the ball. I mean, it's just a different.
Well, and then that's where I think school size doesn't matter as much in volleyball because you got 6 players. Yeah, you're going to rotate different players in and out, but with football, you got to have
22.
Yeah.
I mean, not at the same time, but
you got to have
15, 16-ish
that are complete dudes on one side of the ball, and maybe they can be on both sides. But yeah, you got to be Adina a couple years ago was very top heavy with their athletes, but they ran through the SVC.
Right.
Or
even Southeastern.
Southeastern had maybe the best athlete in the SVC in the last 20 years, and I mean they won 2 gold balls in football, which they had never done before.
Right.
and it's just sometimes you can get that transcendent.
Transcendent.
Yeah.
Transcendent.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to go for.
All right, so a little more volleyball. We spoke on her a little bit. Christian Thompson, for the third time this season, has broken, I don't know what like the county or the league record is, but for the third time this year has broken the Fairfield Union single match kill record. I think it was 31 the first time and then like 33 or 4 maybe. Now it's up to 37, so we'll see if she gets a 40 spot here in the second half of the season. Gets 37 kills against Hamilton Township. That was last Thursday. She has the Falcons on a 5-game win streak since being swept by Bloom-Carroll, most recently a 3-1 win over Unioto. Their next meeting this Tuesday against Circleville. The last time Circleville took that one 3-2. There's a lot on the line here. For Fairfield Union, they're playing for a share. So if Fairfield Union wins, they're tied in second with Circleville. If Circleville wins, outright in second place. So, I'm not looking at the standings currently, so I don't know exactly where Bloom-Carroll is at. I'm assuming they're still undefeated. But yeah, second place more or less on the line here in the MSL on Tuesday with Christian Thompson and the Fairfield Union Falcons.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw out some stuff real quick. Now, I don't claim to know a whole lot about some of these numbers. First off, she averages 6.6 kills per set played, which is absolutely insane because at most you're getting, you can get more than 25 points, but most of the time you're not getting, like, they average 11.6 kills per set. So she averages 6.6 of that. Her kill percentage is 48.1%. Their team is 40.9%. So I'm assuming that when they go to her, that means almost 50% of the time she's getting a kill, and that's not even counting any errors or anything. So out of 632 attacks, she has 304 kills, which I feel like is insane because
she's a junior, correct?
Yes.
I mean, she's a junior committed to OU for a reason, you know what I mean? So, it's not, I say it's not surprising. I'm not trying to like belittle getting 37 kills in one match, but I'm saying her doing that at that level is not as surprising as it would be if like some random average Joe just pulled up and hit a 40 spot on kills in a random match. But
she's also second on their team in digs with 192. I mean, it's just I think she's second in blocks. Yeah, she's second in blocks.
She's like 6'1" or something, isn't she?
Yeah, and she is very athletic. And, she can get off the floor quickly. She's a good basketball player too. I actually interviewed her after I think they won in the district semi.
Oh, Fairfield Union. So we watched them play Fairland.
Yes.
At Southeastern. I didn't even realize that. That just now kind of clicked with me a little bit because they were like a 12 seed and they competed like the first. It was close pretty much the whole time too.
Yeah. So the Falcons out to an 11-2 start. A lot of that behind her. Adeline Wolf is another big player for them, and Fairfield Union is positioning themselves well, maybe not being able to win the MSL because Bloom-Carroll seems like they have a little distance. But they're going to be able to get a really good seed in the district, especially with that win over Unioto because that's a head-to-head.
Right.
I believe they're both 11-2. So, I mean, that's that's going to give them that advantage in that head-to-head. But yeah, when we were kind of putting our script together for the show, that was our impact player was very obvious on who it was going to be, and Thompson, she is an absolute beast, and
So some matches coming up this week. If it wouldn't have been on Monday, one of these previews would definitely be the Fairfield and North Adams. But seeing as this will come out the day after the game, there's not a whole lot. We'll probably talk about that game on next week's Tuesday episode. So look for next Tuesday's episode for that game. But for noteworthy games coming up for the rest of the week, that's Tuesday through Saturday. We'll start with Chillicothe at Jackson. So this is the first time these two teams have played this season. The winner of, and this is on Tuesday, I can't remember if I mentioned that or not. The winner will have sole possession of second place. Loser will have third. Both teams with one loss in the FAC at 3-1. For Chillicothe, 6-8 overall. Jackson 6-7. They both have 3-1 losses to Miami Trace. Now, for Chillicothe, Evelyn Hammond is a player that's kind of came out of nowhere a little bit in terms of our coverage. Is just a freshman and has 135 kills on the season, averaging 3.2%. Addison Smith second on the team with 83 kills. That's right around 2%. That was the player I said we should look out for this year. Little did I know Evelyn Hammond would come out of middle school and completely take over for the Cavaliers. Then Avery Cox has done what you would think a senior ball handler would do, lead the team with assists at 287, averaging 7%. Chillicothe on a three-game win streak with wins over McLean, Hillsborough, and Amanda Clear Creek. So riding a little bit of a wave heading into this matchup with Jackson, who some familiar names on here, especially from our time spent covering them in basketball, seeing as we saw them 3 times last year. Unfortunately, we're going to have to stay away from Jackson this year because apparently
we're just going to pick a game that we know 1,000,000% they're going to win.
Right, because we
no
were
50-50 games.
Sorry,
Coach.
Yeah, we did not do them any favors apparently this year. But Sydney Hughes, a senior, 103 kills, right around 2.1%. Also leads the team in assists with 196, so leading the team in kills and assists. Kenzie Davis, who we actually saw hit a half-court shot at Adina, 85 kills, 1.8%. And then there's 3 other players in the range of about 60 to 70 kills, Ella Osborne, Paige Dailey, and Emma Carroll. And then a couple other players, Allie Bradbury. I think you said it was like a 6'2" or a 4'2" or whatever when they have like 2 different people that set.
6'2", yeah. I don't understand why it's a 6'2" and not a 4'2", but yeah.
Yeah, because there's only 6 players that whatever. I'm sure there's meaning behind it, but
yeah, you can get us in the comments if you want on that.
Right.
Yeah, like 5'1" makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I think Shane was telling me about it one time. I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, if Shane's watching this, he's pulling his hair out.
Yeah, because he knows it.
Right. But Sydney Hughes, we mentioned, has 196 assists, while Allie Bradbury just about 40 behind with 150. So relatively equal ball handling for those 2 players. And then Riley Kilgore leads the team in digs with 196. So just looking at the resumes, it's a pretty even matchup. The 3-1 loss to Miami Trace is one that stands out. One thing that Brock said that I didn't really realize until I actually looked at it is Chillicothe their main problem early on was they just couldn't finish games. I mean, for Unioto, they got out to a 2-0 set against Miami Trace. They took the first set. So, the second half of the FAC season, if they're still able to get out to those 1-0, 2-0 starts, I mean, if they can finish a full game to that same capacity, now, if Miami Trace were to, I don't want to say stub their toe, but say if Chillicothe beats Jackson twice, and then Jackson beats Miami Trace, Chillicothe beats Miami Trace, then Chillicothe would be in first place. So we'll see what happens. The FAC, similar to a lot of leagues, is starting to heat up as we get closer to the second half.
Now, kind of going to that with Hammond being a freshman, do you think maybe that's caught some people off guard early in matches, and then the coaches are adjusting after that?
Maybe not now.
But early, especially.
For instance, like Unioto. Well, I know it was Chillicothe's first game, but for Unioto's maybe like their second. But you don't have any game film on Chillicothe unless there's like over the summer stuff. So maybe may have taken them to. And I don't really know how scouting works, like how you adjust to different things in volleyball. But you see this freshman, you're like, because like for us, all I talked about was like Addison Smith, Avery Cox, and there was, I think, Mickey. I can't remember her full name, but those were kind of the top 3 that I talked about. And I look at the box scores here halfway through the year, and Evelyn Hammond has just been torching people in the FAC. So I think that especially early on in the league schedule and even the non-league, for example, against Unioto, that may have been something that caught people off guard. Maybe they adjusted to it, but they're still 6-8, 3-1 overall league or record in the FAC. So we'll see what happens when we get into the second half of the league play there in the Frontier Athletic Conference. So.
Yeah, and then playing really good teams too in the non-league. Because with being Division I, you got to kind of
that's always right. Yeah. That's always kind of been, especially in like baseball, like you spend the whole year playing teams local to here, and then like first round you're playing Olentangy Orange or Olentangy Berlin or something, and it's like okay, like it's hard. You almost have to make your non-league schedule just top of the line as good as you can find around here, and it's not always easy to do that. So
right, and for those schools, in Columbus, they don't want to come to Chillicothe,
right? Unless it's like at the VA, maybe you could get them to do that.
So it makes it really hard for them to schedule sometimes, because that's why one of the things when they were in the OCC was one of the reasons why people wanted them out of the OCC. Was like, we don't like going to Chillicothe. It's like, okay, you go there once a season. Like, it's not that big of a deal. If you go there for football, you go there every other year.
Right.
And I think that kind of took their athletics back a step a few years back. But they're definitely better on the upswing now. And I think that Chillicothe's in a good position, and that should be a big match. Tomorrow night or tonight as this comes out. Another one, I'm going to kind of go for a twofer here.
Yep.
Kind of due to South Point's lack of information out there. But the Pointers will go to Notre Dame on Wednesday. The Pointers 8-2 overall. They have 2 league losses in the OVC. Notre Dame is 9-2 overall, 1-2 in the non-conference, or maybe it's 3-2 in the non-conference. But either way, they're undefeated in SOC1 play. They will be undefeated in SOC1 play. Like, that's not going to change. But for them, they have losses to Huntington, and they also lost to Bishop Hartley this past Saturday. So
that's nothing to hang your head.
They beat Miami Trace in 3 in their most recent.
Oh, match. Notre Dame did.
Yeah,
okay.
So
that's
it's a good win for them. They're led by Brian Hicks and kills Gracie Ashley at the net as well. Maddie Entler.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
She plays softballs. I think she committed. I think I saw, because I think we follow her on the Overtime account. And I thought I saw something where she committed somewhere for softball.
Yeah, they are a pretty darn good softball program.
I think girls sports, they're good at
everything.
Just about everything. Was it basketball that they won? I don't know if the streak is still going, but
I think it's basketball where they have the crazy streak.
It's like 100 games or something ridiculous.
Yeah, like we celebrated ours a few years ago when I got to 69, and nice. then you look at different things and it's like, oh my gosh, they're over 100.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's amazing. So Entler leads them in digs with 133. Brian Hicks has 124. Gracie Ashley with 113. So all 3 of them really cover a lot of ground. Lindsay Schaefer with 298 assists on the year for them. 131 kills for Brian Hicks. Macy Ford's really efficient for them. She has their highest hit percentage. She has 86 kills. Gracie Ashley has 77. So for them, it's smart to go out in the non-conference and play a team like South Point, who comes from a pretty good league in the OVC, and is near the top of it, as they're sitting in 3rd right now. So that'll be a big non-league game for them. Both teams on Wednesday. And then on Saturday, Peebles, who is 9-2 currently, will travel to Notre Dame for another big game, as that's going to be a big seeding game. I believe they're both D4. I believe Peebles is D4.
Well, you said volleyball D4 is the lowest, correct?
Yes.
Well, then I would assume that's where Peebles most likely is.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big matchup. With Peebles, they have Carroll leads them in kills. Cadence Carroll. Angel Gray leads them in blocks with 37. They're just, they do a lot of really good things, Peebles does, and it gives them a chance to really compete in the non-league as well. So it's going to be an interesting match. I think it probably favors Notre Dame because it's at Notre Dame, but those are going to be 2 teams to definitely watch for, especially in that Division IV tournament. As we inch closer. Each week we get a little bit closer to the tournament draw.
Mm-hmm. So moving on to the SOC2 is a game we touched on a little bit earlier when we were talking about the Webster Wheelersburg game. It's Portsmouth West and Wheelersburg. That game is set for this Wednesday. Although I wrote it Wednesday one place and Thursday on another place. I'm pretty sure it's Wednesday. But nonetheless, West comes into the game a half game up on Wheelersburg in the SOC2. They're 6-1 in the league. Wheelersburg 6-2. All 3 of those losses are to South Webster. For West, Emily Morris, senior, 97 kills, averages 3.1 per set. Cameron Spriggs also over 2 kills per set at 62. And Brooklyn Pitts and Kate Rollins are also above 1 kill per set, so they provide some...
Thursday.
It's on Thursday?
Yep.
Okay. So that game is on Thursday. But Brooklyn Pitts, Kate Rollins also provide some swings on the outside as well. Macy Bradford leading the team in assists with 233 through 30 sets. And then, we've already talked about Emissaire a little bit earlier on in the not this podcast, but I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago we mentioned her commitment to Marshall. Leads the team with 172 digs. We already said this is the first meeting between these two teams, so it'll be interesting to see. As we've I don't want to say we've concluded, but it's highly likely that Webster is going to win out, at least in the SOC2, and take the league. So this is a big matchup in terms of second place, and I'm assuming both of these teams are in the same division in terms of once we get into tournament play. Would that be correct, do you think? Mm-hmm. So, a little bit of tourney seeding on the line here. For Wheelersburg, we've talked about them a lot. Gracie Perkins and Grace Woodward were, sort of the two main returners from last year's team. They're both north of 100 kills. Ella Chamberlain nearly averaging 10 assists per set at 9.7. And then with digs, she's actually tied for first on the team. That's Chamberlain. She's tied with Miley Gleim with 141. So, a lot of people get after it in Wheelersburg. We kind of talked about how they graduated a lot and we were going to see a lot of new names. Well, without looking, I'm pretty sure Gleim is one of those names that maybe, didn't get as, because their playing time, they had 6 with 80 plus, and then the next closest was 12.
Yeah.
So, you were going to see a lot of new faces this year for Wheelersburg. It's a pretty unfortunate year to go through something like that, considering how stacked Webster is. So I would, similar to the games we had talked about earlier, like with, I think it was Fairfield and North Adams we were talking about. Or no, it was Chillicothe and Jackson we were talking about. I think these two teams are pretty evenly matched, and I think that will be a pretty interesting one to check out this Thursday.
Should be a big one, and I don't know if we have coverage there as of now, but it wouldn't surprise me if
it's at West as well.
We have some coverage on that night. Derek will be actually at West at Minford on Wednesday. For
volleyball?
Yep.
Okay.
So maybe not doing the back-to-back nights, which would make sense gas-wise as well.
Well, that was also a game that I had kind of thought about previewing a little bit, just because in terms of record, they're pretty close. Minford's 6-3 in the league. West still 6-1, so they're just haven't played as many games. But the first time around, West was 3-0, just swept them.
Yeah. But
the scores were relatively close. I think it was 25-19, 25-18, and then it got a little bit out of hand in the third. I think it was 25-14. But when you have sets that are 3, 4, 5 points in difference, I mean those are ones
it's
that
not gigantic.
Right. It's one momentum swing, and it's this person wins that set. Now they're up 1-0. Now who knows what's going to happen. So I think this week for West, they've got some tests coming, even though they already beat Minford once this year. Still their first meeting with Wheelersburg. Playing those games back-to-back nights isn't going to be easy. So, we'll see a lot from West here Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah, big test for them for sure. Then our final game that we're going to preview is Unioto at Westfall on Thursday. The first time around, Unioto won in 5. It's actually, they won the first 25-22. Westfall won the next two, 25-17 and 31-29. Then Unioto won 25-17. They closed out with a 15-9 win in the fifth set. They did a really good job, Unioto did, in that match of slowing down Lauren Blackburn. She only had 6 kills in the match. Now, Carly Thornton really stepped up for them with 13 kills, and Aubrey Clark had 18. Tara Wolf, along with Clark, were big time at the net. So was Ella Henry, as those three combined for, let me do the math really quick, 12 blocks between the three. It's I'm not very smart, so just counting that up really quick was impressive, I think. Jalen Whipple had 39 assists and 18 digs in that match. It was the first SVC match between the two this year. Unioto got that big time win to get started. But since then, they have had, one for sure major loss, which was Emma Specht, who's a 4-year starter for them. She just had knee surgery, I believe, on Friday. She tore her ACL and her meniscus. Yeah,
I mean, I just tore my meniscus, and you can, I mean, obviously not an ACL. You can kind of play on a meniscus, but, like, it's not comfortable at all.
Yeah, and I know she missed Thursday's match with Zane Trace. So prayers to her for a quick recovery. Really good kid, good family. As being Unioto people, we do know some of the Unioto people. So it was a tough break for her. As like I said, 4-year starter, looking to have a big senior year, and it just kind of ends early. But Alyssa Stanley, who's only a sophomore, stepped into her role and did a really good job for them on Thursday and then Saturday. Maddie Wetzel has been awesome for them all year long as one of the other ball handlers, but also playing all around for the Shermans. The other loss for them, and I don't know how long term it is, but on Saturday, Ella Cartwright left their match with Fairfield Union with a sprained ankle in the second set and did not return. Last I saw, she's on crutches, but I don't believe it's broken. So who knows when she's back. If she's out for this match, they're going to need Jade Stewart had a really big match the first time. She had 14 kills. Abby Marshall had 8 kills. She's a player that they could put more into that hitter role, and she could really step up. And another one is Zoe Detweiler, also a sophomore. She had 7 kills and 6 blocks in that match. Kyra Stolley and Allie Park need to step up at the net for them. But also overall defensively, Morgan Daniels has been all over the court. I know when I update the, I believe it'll be up tomorrow or today, sometime today before
Tuesday.
The Tuesday before the matches, I'll have the first SVC volleyball leaders page up, which I mean, in a way you could find through Max Preps anyway, but
volleyball is about the only sport you can do that with.
Yeah, so that's something, to look for because, defensively they have Morgan Daniels, Megan Miller. Stewart does a good job playing all the way around. Alexa West is another one that does. They're going to need a bunch of different people to step up for Unioto to be able to stay atop the SBC race when they go to Westfall, especially if Cutright can't make it back for that game. I think the advantage probably goes to Westfall in that aspect. But it should be a really good match. Unio is a really well-coached team, so I think they'll be prepared for that match no matter what they have to do. So it should be a really fun match.
All right, so we'll transition to the soccer side of things now. We will start with boys soccer with some game previews from last week. One Brock talked about a little bit last week was Wheelersburg and Minford. I believe that was the second meeting they've had this year. The first meeting, okay.
Yeah. So they meet late in the year as well. So it was the first meeting, and it was more borderline a must get something out of it for Minford. They'd either get a draw or a win, and
because the tie with West is really
West
nagging on them.
So
which we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, I won't say they're out of the SOC race.
You never know
because
still got to play Webster.
Northwest and South Webster are both good. So I mean that's going to be tough. But Wheelersburg stays undefeated with a 4-2 win over Minford. In the game, Micah Hagans had a hat trick and broke through the 100-goal mark, which I know you'll talk about here in a few minutes. Nick Sylvia had a goal and an assist in the win. Wheelersburg was up 2-0 early, 2-0 at the half. Ethan Cordell for Minford scored a goal to make it 2-1. But then Wheelersburg, Sylvia scored, and then Hagans finished off the hat trick, made it 4-1. Miles Montgomery scored a late goal for the Falcons, but could not get any closer than that 4-2 final. I think when they go to Minford, it'll probably be a little tighter game. Wheelersburg has a little bit more coming back from last year than Minford, but it's a very good Minford team as well. So I would look for that to be another really tight match, maybe tighter on the scoreboard. We will see when they go down to Minford here in a couple weeks.
One thing, and I was looking it up while you were talking just because we mentioned Portsmouth West. I looked, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I just looked at their, I said football. I looked at their soccer roster on Max Preps, and I did not see Jack Holbrook on there.
And he kicks.
You guys got to get Jack Holbrook on the. I mean, it's a little late now because he's a senior, but man, I don't know if he played soccer, but he is without a doubt probably one of, if not the best kicker I've seen. I only got to see him kick a 31-yarder, made that with ease. Would not surprise me if he could make a 40 or a 50-yarder with ease.
But his kickoffs were all high and deep. He put one in the end zone.
Well, he put one in the end zone. There were probably two other ones that
were inside the 5.
Could have rolled into the end zone, but I don't want to say return happy, but when you have guys like Jace Hurd and Creed Smith back, you might as well just return it because any of those could get taken to the house. But I mean, I can't imagine, especially at the high school level, and really like even once you get into the NFL and stuff like that, there aren't too many like great kickers that weren't soccer players. Yeah. So I was kind of surprised not to see him. And obviously, I don't know if that's official or not. I mean, he may have played soccer every year, but Max Preps didn't have him on the roster. I'm sure West has something on like their school website that says something about that. But yeah, one of the better kickers I've seen this year.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And Miles kicks for the Minford football team, Montgomery.
He just needs to be the running back. I mean, they got Pika, but they just need to throw him out wide or something too.
Get him involved. And then,
well, I told you
Connor Estep is for Wheelersburg. Both are really good kickers.
I told you that for Waverly, Hauk, who's listed as their kicker, had like 6 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. I don't know if he plays soccer,
I'm not sure.
Or if he just,
right now, I'm not sure if they
we had guys that kicked that only played football and were pretty good at it, but you never. I just thought it was funny to see the kicker in the book with a rushing touchdown. Yeah. Like it wasn't just like 1 carry for a yard; it was like 6 for 40 and a touchdown.
Do you remember Bryce Robinson at Unioto?
He caught a touchdown.
Yeah, I was gonna say he caught a touchdown pass, and it was a real route. It wasn't like it was a trick play. It was he just went out wide and ran it. So I mean, those guys could definitely play. I don't know if it would be benefit them in the long run to do both, but and actively play. Your dad likes to talk about a kid I played with that kicked and was the running back, and he also played midfield for him, or midfield for us in soccer. And it's just one of those. Sometimes you got to figure out best place for your athletes.
I'm just saying. So if Montgomery kicks for them, I would say if any team were to like run a fake and their kicker for whatever reason was running the ball, Minford probably has the best chance for that to succeed because he's built like a tailback. Yeah. Like he's not built like a kicker.
Yeah, he's so quick with all of his movements that
So one other game we'll talk about, back to the MSL. It's the second time I've said something like this in the last 2 shows. Fairfield Union and Bloom-Carroll tie. This time it's 1-1. It's the second tie between these 2 schools in 5 days. The girls tied 2-2 on September 9th. This game was on the 13th. Cole Raleigh with the lone goal for the Falcons against Bloom-Carroll. The tie actually allows Fairfield Union to control their own destiny in terms of the MSL. They have 4 league games remaining. There's 3 unbeaten teams, them and Bloom both with no losses and a tie. Taze Valley is still undefeated. However, Bloom plays them on Wednesday. So somebody will come out of there with a loss. Then, right, maybe. But either way, somebody's going to come out of that, and it'll result in Fairfield Union still controlling their own, if they win out, which... they got Amanda on Wednesday, Taze on the 27th, so I'm sure we'll talk about that game next Tuesday. And then they wrap it up with Hamilton Township on October 4th and Circleville on October 11th. So the MSL and boys, we talked about how Bloom-Carroll probably the favorite just based on last year's stuff. But, Fairfield Union was one of those teams that could potentially knock them off. And, I mean, Taze Valley is still undefeated through whatever they've played, like 3 or 4 league games. So, between Fairfield Union, Bloom-Carroll, and Taze Valley, it's coming down to the wire a little bit.
You want a John Bruce fact real quick?
Let's have it. Or let's hear it.
I'm 1-0 as a high school soccer coach. Beat Taze Valley last year with Unioto.
There we go.
There we go.
That's
what I'm talking about.
We need Fairfield Union to pick up a win over them.
Thank you, Lucas Haynes.
There we go.
Yeah, so that's good. That was a big match. Obviously, those are... Bloom-Carroll is the main program in that league and they have been for a long time, but Fairfield Union's done a really good job the last few years, and really in all of their sports have just really I don't know if they're going through like a golden age right now.
Well, like we even talked about
Yeah.
Owen Ruff a couple weeks ago. I can't remember the exact stat line, but he had
it was
like
like
400 yards and
yeah.
like 5 touchdowns,
Yeah.
like a kick return and a block punt or whatever. But yeah, definitely some athletes over there in Lancaster right now for the Falcons.
They've done a really good job. I think they probably have some good youth coaching that's gotten these kids ready. But they definitely have some really good.
When girls
classes coming
soccer
in.
made it to like the regionals last year, didn't they? So
Yeah, they beat Unioto in double overtime, I think, in the
I
district
think
final.
off of that kick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't because that
It was
kick
it
is
was a
the
deep
one
free
from
kick,
yeah, because that's
And
in the
in
intro
yeah,
to
it's in
the
intro.
streams, yeah, or not to the streams, but it was the intro that it was the extended intro that Derek had posted like right before the season started. But yeah,
Yeah, so that's always a big match, and it's good for Fairfield Union that if they go and beat Tays Valley, at the very least they're going to be tied with Bloom-Carroll for first in the league. And
right. They well, I probably should have clarified. They control their own destiny in terms of getting a share of the MSL. Still can't win it outright, obviously, if Tays Valley were to win out. But
Right.
If you take down Tays Valley. Well, there's a lot of things that can happen. We'll get to it next week once Bloom and Tays have already played. Then we'll have a little bit of a better idea of what exactly Fairfield Union were to have to do in order to win either a share or just win the MSL outright. So
Right. So then, kind of moving on to some impact players. First off, Unioto's Lucas Haynes. I said thank you to him already for that win for me last year, but he broke the Unioto and Ross County scoring record with his 100. He tied it against St. Trace with his 117th goal, and then against Warren, he had 2 second-half goals to win that game 2-1, but also to break the county record of now his assistant coach, Tyler Bryant, who went and played and won a national championship at Ohio Wesleyan. Really good soccer school. He had 117 career goals. He may want me to throw out there that he was hurt the second half of his junior year, so he probably missed out on another 10 to 15. But I think Lucas will probably get to that the rest of this season. But that puts him comfortably in the top 30 all time in the state for goals in a career.
what's the most? Like
He's not getting to the most. The most is 198 by Callum Latham from Springfield Catholic Central.
How long ago was that?
2011.
Oh, so not
No,
too
but
long ago.
yeah, there was a Latham around my
200.
age.
So you literally have to. 50 goals a year right out of the
Yeah,
gate.
his dad's the coach, but they also played like So
When you got to average like 4 goals a game,
he was a monster. Obviously,
you can't just be.
I think they made it to state a couple of times.
You're going to need extra games, and that and that's the other thing. Like in terms of career goals, like you almost have to be on a successful team because if you're on a team that's sub 500 and soccer, everybody makes the tournament. Correct?
Yeah,
so
but you're only guaranteed one.
Right, you only play one extra game because your team can never win the tournament. If you're on a team that consecutively plays, like I know, for instance, like his freshman year or sophomore year, they went to the Final Four. Yeah. But like if you're only going to the first round, but if you can get like 3-4 extra games each year, it's going to add up and might tack on 20, 25 goals to your final career.
Well, and then last year it really wasn't until about halfway through the year that he was really healthy. So like he only kicked in 3 football games last year for Unioto, and he's a very good kicker. He's one of those kickers I know you're thinking of when you're thinking of like really good kickers. So he missed a good bit. Like he might have played a half in some of those games, but like overall, he wasn't getting a ton of time just to get him back from an early season injury. Now, there's only 5 players that have ever gone over 150 career goals, and it would be tough for him to get there. They had to make a deep run. But Luke Papero from Waverly is one of those players, had 156, actually had...
When was that?
2005 was his...
Okay, so that's like your time.
Yeah,
a couple years.
Yeah, he didn't play against us his freshman year because he was eating Skittles before the game. I'm not kidding. he came up to us and was like, "Yeah, we had
had a no sugar before the game."
It was some weird rule, and he was caught with breaking the rule, and so he did not play that game.
Changed.
We won 8-1.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it probably would have been a little closer, but like he probably would have scored, but they scored at the very end. But yeah, he's got an excellent chance to get in the top 10 if he can get another 15 goals. They're playing Piketon tonight. I would say he probably gets 3 or 4 in that one.
Is that at Piketon? Or
It's at Unioto. So if he gets another 15 goals, he's into the top 10 in state history, which is pretty amazing.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be cool if he could get to 140. That'd be 16 goals, or 21 goals, I guess. But, yeah, so right now I would say it's very unlikely for him to break the Southeast record, which is Propero's, but
Where does that get drawn? Like
What-
the lines for that?
what do you mean?
Well, you said the Southeast record.
I would just say the people that play in the district.
Okay.
So, because I don't think there's an official one, but I would say because Springfield, Youngstown, Springfield, and Mansfield are the other ones in the top
Mansfield.
5. Yeah. So I would say those are outside of it. But also a fun fact for him, he is also in the top something. He's in the state record book for career assists as well. So you think of him as a goal scorer, but he's also the top assist man in Unioto history. He's got a long way to go to pass Drew Basil on that, as he had 93 and then went and kicked it at Ohio State. And if you've ever, like, I can't imagine what he would throw a football like, but his throw-ins were like a straight 40-yard line drive.
Basil?
Yeah, they were unbelievable.
He's a big dude.
Yeah,
too.
they were just absolutely glorious throw-ins. So yeah, big shout out to Lucas Haynes. Unioto out to a pretty solid start in the year. I know they lost to Marietta, who's unreal on Saturday. They just, it's a Marietta will be the 1 seed in that area. That might actually bump Unioto into the 4 seed, which would not be where they want to be. They have a big matchup with Fairfield Union. That could be for the 3 seed coming up in a week or so. For Unioto also, they've got, Camden Smith's gotten off to a good start this year for them, and also Cameron Thompson, Owen Link, and that defense have been really good. So, it's it's definitely a record that I'm sure Lucas is proud of, but if you asked him, he probably just, he likes playing. He likes playing with his friends, and yeah, I don't think he's not a kid that seems like it's that big of a deal to him, but it is a pretty big deal because, it's 40 years of Unioto soccer, and he's at the top of it and top of all of Ross County.
So one other milestone and getting a little bit closer to record areas, Max Hagans of Wheelersburg netted his 100th career goal in that win over Minford that we talked about a little bit earlier. The Wheelersburg record for goals in a career is 117. Scioto County just a few more at 120. So he's at 23 goals through the first 8 games, more or less averaging 3 goals per game. I think it's like 2.9. They got 9 games left, so you think about that, 3 goals per game, 9 games, 25, 26, 27
They're going to make
goals.
a big tournament run.
Plus the tournament, there's a good chance he's going to get past. I don't know what I think he's at like 102 or I don't know.
102, I believe.
So, needs 15 to tie the record for Wheelersburg, needs 18 to tie the record for Scioto County. I would say the chances of him getting at least 20 are pretty high, especially like you mentioned with the tournament. I mean, they're going to get 4 or 5. I don't know.
Yeah, they've got a good chance to make a deep run, and they beat Unioto early to start the year. Unioto beat Grandview Heights, which has kind of been their Wheelersburg's big rival the last few years, and
in the tournament.
Yeah, and I think they beat them. Would have been Hagen's freshman year to go to state, and they've lost the last couple of years to them in similar situations.
Get back now.
Yeah, they just got to get back, and someone's got to beat them. They need to, whether it's Wheelersburg or Minford or Peebles or North Adams, one of these schools needs to go out and beat Grandview Heights just for maybe how their coach carries himself. But yeah, the 2 times defending state champion for a reason. But Max Hagans, he went from being he was a starter. He was a very important piece as a freshman for them, to being immediately filling in for Aaron Jolly, who was that all-time leader with the 117. Doing it as a sophomore just really has stepped up, and he's really fun to watch. To the best of my knowledge, is 8 for 8 in his career on penalty kicks. That may be up a little bit, but he's at least 8 for his last 8. So you get him into a situation where they get fouled in the box, and it's almost cashed immediately. So,
right.
So he's been an outstanding player for them, and definitely a fun one to watch. So hoping for just a healthy continue this season, and maybe he can join Lucas in that top 10 with a big tournament run.
Mm-hmm. So a couple more impact players. One from the smallest school in the state of Ohio with athletics, or maybe just overall, Landon Rowe from Ironton St. Joe.
Landon Rowe from Ironton St. Joe. Yeah. Now, one thing real quick, as I believe it was on our overtime account, we were just alerted Peebles just beat Ironton St. Joe 1-0. Soccer on Monday night. So that's one of the things about shooting this at
on Monday.
Yeah. So shout out Peebles. I know they're
depending on how long this episode runs. Well, hey, I guess it depended how early the Fairfield North Adams game started. We may get an update on that by the time we're getting towards the end of girls soccer. So
yeah. So so that's a big win for Peebles. That's a good program. And there's somebody that I'm sure we'll talk about here in the future as well. But right now, talking Ironton St. Joe's with Landon Rowe. If you haven't watched my interview with Brady Mettinger and Wesley Neal from the other night in their win over Valley, just the way, Wesley did fine. Brady was unbelievable. Like, it was such a good interview, and the way he talked about everything was just really good. So big shout out to him. 8 goals, 7 assists for him on the season, doing a really good job. But he mentioned with Landon Rowe, they had a kid named Zachary Johnson that graduated last year, had over 40 goals in the year, 99 career goals, which has to be, that's a heartbreak. Like, he hit the post in the last 10 minutes of the district final game too.
Gosh,
yeah.
That's tough.
So, they had to replace him, and the way Brady said it was just like Landon Rowe's just doing it. Like, they know they can go to him down that left wing. He's going to make something happen. Their first goal came off of a corner kick or a cross from him, which got crossed back and Neal scored. And then the second goal was off a corner kick from him that got crossed and then headed back to Mettinger, and he scored. Then he directly had the third assist, and he also hit the post. He does a lot of different things on the left side, can really make a lot of stuff happen. 8 goals, 10 assists so far on the season for the junior. He's a player to really watch for, as you mentioned, with them being the smallest school in the state of Ohio with soccer. They're playing with a lot of freshmen, a lot of young kids, but
whatever they got.
Yeah, with whatever they got. And even with that loss tonight, they're 7-2. And it's just, you lose a player that scores almost 100 career goals, and then you're still 7-2 the next year. Pretty impressive for Ironton St. Joe, the Flyers. Wesley Neal leads them with 12 goals. In that game the other day, Jack Whaley scored his third goal, only a freshman, also has 8 assists for them. I believe it was Zane Dressel had an assist, also a freshman. They've only got 15, 16 kids, and they're playing all these young kids, but you can just tell they're well coached. They have good leadership on the team. They're a fun team to watch. Now, based off their depth, how young they are, I don't know how deep of a run they can make, but I think they're well on their way to an SOC title once again.
So one final impact player for us in regards to boys soccer is the Zane Trace Pioneers goalkeeper and not kickoff specialist, but does PATs, and I don't know if they've attempted a field goal.
He had the game-winning field goal against North Union.
Oh, they kicked it. As time expires? Or?
No, it was a minute and a half left.
See, I didn't know
so
that.
pretty big, though.
And we'll get into football next episode, but just we've seen how special teams, especially in that Piketon ZT game, how important special teams can be. I mean, for Piketon's case, they don't have I don't know if they just don't have a kicker, but they go for 2 every time, and they were 0 for 4. And then, I'm drawing a blank on the player's name who did kickoffs for them.
It was Jordan Harrington,
right.
who was also a soccer player.
And, he put that mortar kick right in the no man's land, and then I think it was maybe Aiden Dunn or somebody ran down there and picked it up, and that, it was already like a 2-score game, but that more or less put it on ice. So, Zane Trey's soccer team is,
paying off for
the football team, yeah.
Yeah, so Judah Hanks, really good goalie, very good athlete back there, good leader. I saw anywhere from 9 to 12 or 14 saves against Unioto. It just kind of depends on how you score it. But either way, I know multiple of them were acrobatic. He covers ground really well. He's very good tactically. He knows how to cut off angles. Is one of the top boys goalkeepers in the area. Through 6 games, they had given up 10 goals as a team. He was sick for the game where they gave up 4 goals. So he's only given up 6 goals in 5 games, including 3 against Unioto. And Unioto had a bunch of shots on him. So he's one of those players that, we don't talk goalies all that much. Unless it's usually within the flow games, but when we're talking impact players, we don't normally do it. So I know we thought it was important to shout out, one of the top goalies in the area, and Judah Hanks.
So some noteworthy games in the upcoming week, most of them being in the SOC2. Only one of the 4 teams in the 2 games is not, and that being OVC with South Point. But the first one, South Webster at Wheelersburg. South Webster, one of those teams that, just hasn't gotten over the hump in terms of beating a Wheelersburg or Minford, but man, they hang around till the very end. Seems like every time.
They lost 3-2 at home against Wheelersburg, or 2-1. They lost 3-2 at home against Minford. So unbeaten on the road, as they'll go to Wheelersburg on Tuesday night, which I'll be there giving updates for. Should be a really good matchup. I think Wheelersburg will continue to be tested throughout their league. I think their back line is kind of, what has to show how good they are. They've done a good job overall, but with Hagans and Nick Sylvia, this is a Wheelersburg team that can just flat out fill it up. Then Ethan Hochstetler also has 6 goals for them on the year. Connor Eastup does a really good job out of the midfield for them, has 8 assists to go along with 2 goals. Nick Sylvia leads them in assists with 10. For South Webster, they're a team that, they're well coached. They're always right in the mix of the SOC. So this is a big time game. I'm very interested to see how they do. Like I mentioned, they haven't lost on the road. They're 3-0 on the road, 6-2 overall. Wheelersburg's going to look to protect the Ed with the birds or the crow's nest and everything.
I got to get down there.
It's
hard because, with them doing
their own stuff,
right? Yeah. They do their own streams for everything. So, I've never been to their gym. I've seen pictures of their gym. I've actually I've probably seen pictures of the football/soccer stadium, but I haven't. I couldn't tell you what it looks like because I've just never been down there for it. But once it gets into playoff time, and maybe if they host a playoff game and we're not streaming anything that week, I'll go down there and check it out because it seems like a pretty
cool.
popular spot. Yeah, at least in our coverage area.
It's a really good setup, really cool spot, and it's a really good game or place to watch soccer. It's kind of weird because one side
it's smaller, or it's tighter.
It's
or something.
Tight, yeah. And one side the players on the visitor side have to go outside of, they're not on the field. So they had to go outside of the fence to go up to go to their bench. And it's not a huge walk or anything, but it's just
different.
Yeah, it's just different. And Wheelersburg's on their side, but it's not like their side has a ton of room, as their track is clearly not there. But that also makes it a really good setup. If the fans are that close because there's no track. It's going to be loud, and that's how games are at Miller Stadium. So I think I'm really excited to get down there and get my first eyes on South Webster this year. They typically are, since they don't have football, they typically get their really good athletes out for soccer as well. So the names you see in basketball are ones that you'll see also in soccer, and they've made some really big runs. They're up there with Berlin Highland and Bloom-Carroll as teams that have been to the regionals the most without breaking through to the state level. And that's because, the reason they get to the regionals is because they're so well coached and it's such a good program. And at some point in the future, I see them breaking through, but this is going to be a big time matchup. And, I think it favors Wheelersburg at home, but they can't get lazy or else the Jeeps are going to drive home with a win.
I'm still waiting on the Jeeps merch.
Yes.
It's like my favorite. I'll say it every time. My favorite mascot in our coverage area. One last game to look out for. This one also on Tuesday. Not a whole lot of meaning in terms of league plays. It's a non-conference game between Minford and South Point, but it should just be a fun night between these two teams. This one is once again at South Point. When you look at the resumes, pretty evenly matched. They're both 6-1-1 for South Point. 42 goals for, 9 goals against. So the goal differential there is pretty large. And here's some fun names from the Pointers.
Yes.
Maurice Klattenhoff, a junior, has 15 goals and 8 assists in 8 games, and then Joey Blowbaum, a senior, has 10 goals and 6 assists. Their only league loss was 2-1 to Gallia, who is actually undefeated in the OVC. However, does have a tie to Rock Hill, who is 1-6-2, which is kind of weird. But we'll see what happens in the OVC. The next game against Gallia for South Point is October 12th. That's the last game of the season. So we'll see what happens there and see if maybe South Point's able to force their way into a share or outright title in the OVC. And then for Minford, we've talked about them a little bit. Since I did it for South Point, I did it for Minford as well. 36 goals for, 11 against. With how much we've talked about Minford, the names are pretty familiar. Miles Montgomery, Ethan Cordell, and Gavin Downey. Once again, it should just be, a pretty entertaining non-league meeting if you want to watch some good soccer. It should be a pretty good showing of some of the best that the SOC and OVC have to offer. Once again, that's Tuesday night at South Point.
Yeah, so when I was looking through the our
fall
coverage
schedule.
Yeah, our coverage schedule for Tuesday, I was actually waiting to see, what games are we going to cover that night. And when I saw, South Webster at Wheelersburg was available, I was going there. Minford at South Point was my second choice. Yep. So I think that's going to be a big matchup. We're going to really get a good chance to see how good the Pointers are. Because Minford's a very good program.
Yep.
And, well coached, and obviously with kids like Cordell, Downey, and Montgomery, they've got some studs out there on the soccer field, and that'll be a good matchup. We'll see how South Point fares.
All right, girls soccer now, our last segment of this week's episode. We'll start with game reviews. Another tie, John. Minford 1, Wheelersburg 1. Those are, I would assume, the two powerhouses in the SOC too for girls soccer. So we're seeing here pretty evenly matched. I think now this was their second meeting, correct, or was this their first? So that'll set up I don't know. I mean, kind of a rubber match since they tied, but
last year they played 3 times.
With
the third coming in district play. So it wouldn't be surprising if they play each other.
Same thing happens again.
Because last year Wheelersburg did a really good job after losing late. I want to say it was 6-5 or something crazy, where just a bunch of goals were scored late in the game, and Lexi Conkle went nuts for the Falcons. Well, they focus on keeping her outside the box, making her life a little bit harder. She still had 9 shot attempts in this match, but was unable to score. The scoring started by Ella Hochstetler, a freshman, and for Wheelersburg in the 22nd minute of the first half. Then Ava Cronin for Minford answered less than 5 minutes later. Late in the first half, Minford nearly scored again, but their goalie, Amber Blevins, who played really well on Saturday, also made an acrobatic save where she kind of forced the ball out with her hands while her body was in the goal, but didn't let it cross the goal line. So it was really heads-up play by her to keep it tied. From there, Minford was able to be much more on the attack behind Cronin, Maggie Reisner, and Lexi Conkle, but they weren't able to break through the defense. They had Addison Lemon had 8 saves to the Falcons on the night. I didn't get official numbers on Amber Blevins' saves, but I know that Minford had at least 16 overall shots. I don't know how many on goal technically. But in that, along with Blevins in goal, the back line of Haley Collier, Madison Kothkamp, and Lainey Greenhill did a really good job for the Pirates to keep it at a 1-1 game, and that's going to be a big-time matchup late in the year. Now, that one's going to have more SOC, more than likely, we'll have more SOC title aspirations on the line and that than the boys' side, but that should be a really, really good night of soccer down in Minford Way.
So one other game review, it's another Wheelersburg game. This time they actually were able to win. This was on Saturday.
They went 1-1-1 last week. They lost to Boyd County, Kentucky, on Thursday. So they just played a ridiculous schedule in the week.
So they win 3-1 against North Adams, the first loss of the season for the Green Devils. I know you said Hochstetler. Well, just to make sure we get it right, unless you know for sure that's...
It is.
Is that okay? I was going to say Hochstetler. I wasn't sure if that's how it was pronounced. But Ella Hochstetler has 2 goals, and then Krista Williams also has a goal for the Pirates, which says a lot considering we've talked about how Harley Brand is one of the better goalkeepers in the area, and they're able to net 3 goals. So that just kind of shows how they compare to a different league in the Shack. For North Adams, Hunter Grooms, their only goal. Like I already said, a great win for Wheelersburg, able to get their lone win of the week was 0-1-1 heading into that game. So a nice way to get back on track. And, good win for the Pirates.
Yeah, so the Krista Williams goal was actually off of a corner kick, and she played it perfectly, and it went straight into just inside the back post. Like, it just hooked in, went over Brand, and went into that back post. And unless Brand was back there was really nothing she could do on it. So it was really well-placed ball by Williams. And it definitely looked like it was on purpose trying to play it close in towards the goalie. Maybe not as perfectly as it was. But after Hunter Grooms tied the game, it was,
the Ella Hochstetler show.
It was early in the second half, and it felt like maybe some momentum went that way, but then Hochstetler immediately scored. Was assisted by Mia Vastine, who played great in the midfield. Was really in control in the midfield in that match. She was really good in there. Assisted Hochstetler, who kind of had a one-on-one and beat Brand, who was diving to her left just outside of her outstretched hand, and kind of did it the same on the last goal, where she was kind of setting up to where Brand's looking at, the right side is more of it. So she's almost stepping that way, and then she's just going to the near post, which maybe is a little tougher to finish in, but Hochstetler did it with confidence. She's got 6 goals already as a freshman, and just really had an outstanding overall game for them.
Sticking with North Adams, we'll talk some girls impact players, John. We'll start with Kenlie Jones, one of the dual athletes over there at North Adams. Just for me, just seeing what she could do on the hardwood, big impact player on the pitch as well.
Yeah, there you go. Attaboy, Dewdog. So at last check, she had 11 goals and 7 assists. Some of the stuff's not updated as crisply as I was.
Krispy Kreme.
Yes. That's all. Hey, they're not a sponsor. So that's all you got to get that one.
That's my bad.
So Kenlie Jones with 11 goals and 7 assists. And that's coming into last week. They had a couple more wins before Saturday's game. Last season, she had 19 goals and 12 assists on a team that went to the regional semis before losing in a shootout to Lynchburg Clay. Kind of just blanked on that for a half second. But, she didn't have the assist technically on Saturday, but she set up that goal against Wheelersburg. It was just, she does a really good job overall for them. She's a two-way player in the midfield, so she does a really good job defensively and offensively. And she doesn't seem to get tired. She also has one of the better throw-ins in the girls area that I've seen in a while, especially for her size. She just does a really good job overall. They're 7-1, and she's their top goal scorer and assist person. But along with goalkeeper Harley Brand, who we've talked about in the past, is just outstanding in goal for them. Tatum and Hunter Grooms, Jada Mason, they've got a lot of talent coming back from last year. They've got a nice mix of sophomores that they use, and it's a team that I still look to make a deep tournament run.
Big game coming up.
Yeah, big game with Lynchburg coming up with Lynchburg next week. So it's a it's a really good program. They do a good job in Seaman, and the Green Devils, I think, despite the setback, are definitely set up for future success as well.
I think we have one more impact player for girls soccer.
Sort of had two.
We have two more? Okay.
Well, no, we had one more because we were going to talk about one in the game preview. Yeah. So, and also, when we went through the OVC, we weren't sure. We weren't sure how good Rock Hill was going to be because they graduated so much. But Emma Scott has been awesome for them so far. She leads the Red Women with 14 goals.
There we go.
Yeah, she's second on the team with 5 assists. They're off to a 6-2 start on the season. She's actually contributed on exactly half of their goals on the season. So they have 38 goals. She's had a piece of 19 of them. I almost said 38. Rock Hill's out to a comfortable lead in the Ohio Valley Conference. They've dominated league play for the last few years, and it's looking like they're going to do it again this year. Allison Rogers and Chloe Long have also been really impactful on the offensive end for Rock Hill. And they started off 1-2. They had a big loss to Wheelersburg, which I think they've kind of put in the rear view, because since then they have outscored opponents 28-1 in their current 5-game winning streak, with I believe 4 of those being league games. This week they travel to Zane Trace and Gaia Academy as they'll look to continue their winning ways. So it's a program that's been set up for the future, and they have not really taken a step back despite big, heavy losses to graduation.
So we'll talk some upcoming games this week. I'll start with, you'll go ahead. We'll keep it in chronological order in terms of the day. So we'll start with a little FAC matchup in Chillicothe at Jackson this Tuesday.
Yeah, big one there. I believe this is where...
I'm assuming Brock will...
yes.
Most likely
Brock
be.
will
That's
be there.
like,
We'll have some pretty pictures from Marissa.
Thank you, Christian.
Yes. I believe this is where Jackson actually got Chillicothe last year. It was one of their first losses in forever in league play. Jackson, they're led by Sydney Carpenter on the offensive end. She had a hat trick against Washington Courthouse last week. She had their game-winning goal against Unioto the week before. She does a really super fast, very athletic, only a sophomore. She does a really good job offensively for them. So that gives them the ability to use their experience a little more defensively. With Maddie Wahlberg in goal, TJ Carpenter does a really good job for them as well. They're a team that, is kind of built to play a lot of defense, but also get on the counterattack, and that's what Sydney Carpenter does so well for them. Chillicothe, after a tremendously poor start at 0-3, have really rebounded well. They had a 4-0 win over Unioto a week and a half ago, where it was a little closer for the last few minutes, but then they pulled away. But it was it was a little closer because Unioto's Maya Free was amazing that night. And it wasn't because it was that tightly played. So it seems like Chillicothe's on the upswing, and I'd look for this to be a really tight competitive matchup at Alumni Stadium. Beautiful Alumni Stadium down at Jackson. So it should be a fun matchup. Definitely Brock will have the updates tonight.
So since we've talked about North Adams in 2 of 2 segments, I figure we might as well just go ahead and finish it out with the Green Devils when they take on Fairfield. That game is going to be played on Thursday, I believe.
Yes.
Both teams. It's been like this for a lot of the matchups we've previewed. Both teams come in 7-1 overall. For North Adams, 4-0 in the Shack. Fairfield 3-0. So Lynchburg Clay still hanging around, but potentially a Shack, because I think they only play each other once. So, big Shack implications here in terms of rankings at the end of the year. For Fairfield, a 48-2 goal differential through their first 8 games of the season, led by Faith Donnelly, 16 goals, 7 assists, right around 2 goals per game, actually right at 2 goals per game. And then Kennedy Zink and Vivian Henninger are also above 10 goals. Henninger right at 10, and then Zink with 12. For North Adams, we already talked about Kenlie Jones. She has 11 goals on the season, along with 7 assists. You mentioned Hunter Grooms, Julia Wagner also play large roles in their attack as well. And then Harley Brand going to make it really tough for Fairfield to score, one of the premier keepers in our coverage area. So when you take, it's kind of like the high-powered offense versus the high-powered defense deal. You have an offense in Fairfield who has 48 goals, only allowing 2 in the first 8 games, but then you have a goalkeeper in Brand who, is a lockdown keeper, especially in the Shack, and, anytime they go non-league against any of the teams around here. So, I look for this to be pretty competitive. We already talked about North Adams having to take on Lynchburg next week, so not an easy slate of games coming up here the next 6 or 7 days, but we'll see how they fare here as the Shack starts to not really wind down, but maybe get into the third quarter of league play.
Yeah, it should be a good matchup there, and I think I'll be there, more than likely.
Potentially.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there. So more than likely I'll be there, and should be because my other activity on Saturday morning is no more. So I've got a little opening on my schedule. So
all right.
We'll see.
Well, that just
won't guarantee it, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. That'll just about do it for this episode of SOSA Overtime presented by McDonald's. John, unless you have anything extra you think we missed or just any extra nonsense you want to throw out there, which as your face looks like, I'm assuming that's what we're going to get.
Nope.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think that will do it on today's episode of SOSA Overtime presented by McDonald's.
Love you.